Today I'm going to be installing a Tekonsha P3 brake controller in my Lexus GX 460 to slow down this bad boy. Alright, so we have our P3 controller, and the P3 controller, from reading in the instructions, has some kind of, almost like a phone, you know, it knows where it's at. And so you can't install this here or sideways or anything. It has to be in the motion of the vehicle, straight on with that. So because of the airbag here and the brake here, and you got a brake here with your foot and the brake there with your foot, the only really option is to install it right here. That's kind of out of the way of the airbag, out of the way of the pedal, because, you know, I'd love to have it here, but now it's in the way of the pedal down below. So really up here is the only place to do it. Now, the dash seems to be pretty sturdy just on the, I'll call plastic vinyl side here. And then behind it is a big piece of metal that you could actually drill into. I believe at this point that we'll be able to just go into the dash itself and not the metal behind it. And if for some reason I knock this off, then I could always go deeper. So not a big deal, but so we have a little bracket here, and I think bracket wise it makes sense to be right off this bump that's in the dash area. So we're going to take a look at that. And that seems to be a really good spot there. So we're going to tape that off. Now I have a micro little level that I could use. Get us somewhat close. So the other component is the wiring harness. Now, the Lexus actually has a wiring harness built in that's already sitting there ready to go. You just pop this onto that. This goes into the back of the unit. The only thing we have to worry about now is the ground. So I'm going to test to see if some of these areas have a ground for screws that are already sticking out. And if it is, then we are just going to piggyback off of that, make our life a little simpler. So I have a meter that beeps when I'm hearing ground. So we are hearing some continuity there. Now we just need to double check whether that continuity is actually going to ground, which I believe it is. Alright, so what I did is I hooked up my negative terminal, and then I'm just touching this and then touching this to the screw. And it is making noise, which means it is negative. So now we just need to figure out what the thread size of that screw is, and then pop this on and screw it on. Alright, so what we found is this nut right there is hitting ground. This big nut up here is hitting ground. However, it's a little bit different. It's kind of like just cylinder rod coming out, and then there's threads afterwards. And on this adapter, this will not go over the threads, but it will on this one. So I'm going to pop it on this one and just show you off to the side there. You can see that there's a little white connector ready to go, just sitting there on the side next to your emergency brake pedal. So we're gonna get this stuff installed, tie it up, make it look nice. Alright, so one of the things about mounting in this area is your cables come down and your emergency brake is right there. So what I ended up doing is 2 ties, one around the cables to bring the cables together because they're not in a loom, and then another just to tie it to this little area, which is pretty much out of the way. You can move that around so your finger doesn't get gouged. Once you're sitting with those cables out of the way, it's totally fine. Before I did that, those cables were in the way and I couldn't get my foot on the pedal. It was really difficult. Now, once you start your vehicle, you're going to see that there's no trailer connected. That is true if there is no trailer connected. What I've also found out is that is also true when your trailer brakes don't work and the unit doesn't see the trailer brakes because you have an open or closed or whatever it is, that technology that they use to trigger those brakes. So I'm assuming it's an open at that point, which means that a wire is not connected all the way. Now, in the case of how trailers are wired, if one wire is broken on, let's say, one brake, that doesn't mean 3 brakes are working. That means none of them work. One wire open means the whole system goes down. So when I first installed this, I was like, well, is it the unit that's not working? Is it the trailer that's not working? Because, you know, I also just bought the trailer and supposedly everything worked. Of course, that was not the case. Trailer brakes are electronic with magnets and all sorts of stuff. I got a car show to go to in 4 days. Like, I don't have time to figure this out. I dropped it off at a place, and for a few bucks, they were able to fix the whole thing, get it all working. And now when you connect the trailer to the controller, it shows the trailer is connected and all your settings start turning on. But until that, it doesn't mean you can't go to the menu right now, but this no trailer connected thing just kind of keeps interrupting and interrupting. So for the most part, you really want your trailer connected before you could do any kind of dial in. The other thing I'll mention with this model is the car is off and the thing is still on. So these don't have a power button or anything. They actually time out after like 10 minutes and go to sleep. So don't worry that your battery is going to drain and stuff. That's what I kind of thought. And to me, I actually would come out 15 minutes later and see if it's still on, and it was. But it seemed like after a day or two, it kind of found its way, and it's working fine at this point and turns off after a while. So now that the trailer is connected, you can see that it's no longer orange. It's no longer popping up the warning light. And then this is actually applying the brake manually. So you could actually grab this manually while you're driving and slow the situation down if you need to. If the car was on and I pressed the brake, you'd probably, oh, it's actually working now. There you go. So while you're driving, it goes up to 1.3, 1.7. And then you have B1, B2, B3, I believe, which actually depends on how much weight is behind you. So if you have, you know, massive, huge, like fifth wheel, you might be on B3. If you have a medium-sized trailer, B2, and then a smaller trailer, B1. And so those are kind of adjustments that you could have. And I think there's also a gain adjustment. But in any case, you could see that the unit is working now. And while I'm just, let's say, in idle, kind of slowly driving down the street at 2 miles per hour, I could engage this and you could feel it actually pull the car and slow it down, so you know that the trailer is working. In the manual, it says you should be driving 25 miles per hour, and you could adjust some things to get it perfectly dialed in. Of course, you really need the load in the trailer to dial that in correctly. At the trailer shop, they were saying that if you're doing the idling or doing, let's say, 5 miles per hour, and you flip the switch manually without touching the brake on your car, that it should be slowing you down without the wheels dragging and locking up. So that's another good way of doing it. Which one's better, I don't know, but in any case, that gives you an idea of what it takes to put a trailer controller on a GX 460.